Hello and welcome to Coffee is for Closers. I'm your host, Tim Brigham, as always. But today I have with me the wonderful and fantastic Haley Westoff. It's great to be with you today.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
For those who don't know you, please tell us about yourself. We usually start with numbers and, do you have a team or tell us about you?
So I've been in the business for 11 years. I run a team, the Westhoff Group. We have currently 7 agents and 3 full-time admin. We are just about over $500 million in sales.
Wow.
And we average about, I'd say, 80 to 100 million per year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So some people would be surprised because even though you're probably very proud of how long you've been doing this, that doesn't seem like forever, and you're already in some really big numbers. How did you get started with all this? How did you get from where you are today to the beginning?
It's been a journey.
Okay.
A long and crazy wild ride, but I never started doing this thinking I was going to be a top producer, thinking I was going to have these huge numbers that I did. I just started this, fell in love with it, did a really good job. The success followed, and here I am.
So, all right, let's unpack it. Who was your mentor in the business when you started? Who'd you start with?
I did start with a team. I started with the Rizzo Group.
Okay.
Sharon Rizzo. Little shout out to Sharon Rizzo, who's amazing. She was my mentor, but honestly, I kind of grew up just, my brother's in commercial real estate. My dad always owned a lot of properties. I always loved properties. I was always very interested in real estate. So I would say for the most part, I was self-taught and just kind of grew up teaching myself about it and being interested in it.
Okay. So have you been in Illinois this whole time or how did you?
No. So I've lived in a lot of places.
Okay.
Born and raised in Chicago, went to school in Arizona, lived in Spain for a year.
Hold on, you went to school in Arizona? Wait,
I did.
We have to have a very serious conversation right now.
I did.
Where?
Arizona State.
Interview's over. Let's cut this. No, I'm a Wildcat, so that's
Oh,
that's
no
a little rough.
way.
That's a little rough. I grew up on 4th
Okay.
Ave. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we won't hold it against you. But okay, so Arizona and then California, you said?
Arizona. Then I moved to Spain for a
Spain.
year.
Okay. Wow.
And thought I was going to actually live there forever, but
Okay.
came back, went to California, lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, met my husband there, and then moved back to Chicago.
Wow. So hold on. Bounce around quite a bit. So how did that lead to real estate? Like, did you decide that in California? Did you decide that here? Arizona? Where did you start?
So in California, I was actually, it honestly feels like a past life, but
Okay.
I was a high school Spanish teacher at Beverly Hills High School. Very different than what I
Wow.
do now.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did that for 8 years. It was a really tough job, but
I can only imagine because like Beverly Hills, like high school,
Yes.
there's no way.
I loved it. It was
Really?
great. I'm
Okay.
glad I did it. It was an experience, and I think it has really prepared me for what I do now. So
Okay.
it was great. I don't regret it, but it's the toughest job in the world. I will say that.
Some of us do act like high school children, so it does make sense.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. All right.
So basically, my husband and I, we lived in, LA for a while. We started adulting. We got married, started talking about having children. Had a couple crazy things going on in Los Angeles in our lives there, and decided it was time for us to move back to our roots. My husband's from Iowa, go back to the Midwest and be around Midwestern people, which was something that we really needed at that point in our lives because we had some crazy run-ins with people in LA.
Wow. Tell me about the crazy run-ins. What happened?
Oh, well, let's see. We bought a condo, our
Okay.
first condo.
Okay.
The day we moved in, we found it was a foreclosure, so we bought it from a bank.
Okay.
We found a bag of letters addressed to the new owners. By the way, you have a very crazy neighbor who will ruin your life.
Stop.
Yes.
Okay.
And that he did. So we had a neighbor who was legitimately psycho. I didn't know what that word meant until I had this neighbor. He was psychotic, and he would take a hammer to our adjoining master bedroom, primary bedroom walls and hammer from the hours of like 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. This is when I was teaching, and I'd have to wake up at, 5:30 a.m. He would chant, and, he thought our washing machine was shaking his apartment. That's why he would do it. Called the police hundreds of times.
Hold on. He was banging a hammer because he thought the washing machine was shaking his apartment?
Correct. That we were doing laundry at 2 a.m.
Wow. I love real estate stories.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. The police stopped, responding at all because they had been to his place so many times. It wasn't until he started threatening to, because the police said, unless he's threatening to take his own life or others, we can't do anything. So
wow.
One day he started threatening to remove certain people in our building. So he ended up getting taken away on a 5150 hold. We had to order or hire a security guard to come sit on our floor of 4 units because I was terrified. And it was honestly one of the most traumatic things that ever happened to me. And it was the catalyst for us moving back to Chicago. And, as cliche as it say, the saying is everything happens for a reason. I really believe that if it wasn't for that neighbor, we would still be living there. And I cannot be happier that we moved back to Chicago and raise our family here.
That's a great way to look at it.
Honestly,
I like that.
I really, that saying is, corny, and people are always like, yeah, whatever. But I really, really believe that he chased us back to Chicago, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm glad that it ended the way that it did, because you started a career, based off of some craziness, which I think we all can relate to. Was your first, it sounds like you bought a place, so you had a real estate experience there, and then you sold a place, right?
Yes. And that is actually kind of what led me into real estate.
Okay.
As a teacher, and my husband had just finished law school, we were definitely living paycheck to paycheck, getting couch money to pay for the, dinner on the weekends and whatnot. So when it came time to sell, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have to pay this huge percentage of commission. And I thought, I can do this myself. So I tried. I was a for sale by owner seller.
Oh no.
I know.
So how'd that go?
It was a fucking nightmare.
Okay. All right. We're getting somewhere.
So
tell me about it.
Yeah. So I found one of those services online that said, hey, we'll get your listing up on the MLS for $500. So, I was
favorite.
Like, great. I was like, this is awesome. I wrote the description. I gave him all the info, took my own photos, sent it to him. I was like, this is great. I'm going to do such a good job, and I'm going to save so much money. So, he puts it on. I think I sent it to him in like beginning of November. A month goes by. I get no phone calls. And I'm like, what is going on? I mean, my place is pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And I got literally not one phone call. So I Google it, and I look into the listing. First of all, half the photos are sideways. Second of all, and most importantly, it was on the wrong MLS. Like, not even the MLS that serviced our area. He had put it on the wrong MLS. When I found that out, it was December 24th. It was Christmas Eve. And I called.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. I called, I screamed at the guy. I was like, you need to change this. So he changes it, and he puts it on the right MLS on Christmas Day. Like, literally the worst day of the year to put it on the MLS. So that's the day my listing went live. you can imagine, not a lot of people saw it. But I did get some phone calls, and I did do some showings. I did get an offer.
Did you get any calls on Christmas?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
That's amazing.
I think I did.
That's amazing.
I think I did. We went on vacation, and I was getting calls during vacation. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. Like,
yeah.
I have to work on vacation.
Yeah.
So anyway,
apparently realtors have to do some work or something.
Yeah,
right?
like apparently this whole coordinating and showing thing is actually time consuming.
Right.
So I coordinated all these showings. I get home from my vacation. I do these showings. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Get an offer, negotiate the offer. I'm like, yeah, I've got this in the bag. Like this is great. Got the offer. Got a buyer. To make a long story short, I was an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. And, I made this deal where it was going to be impossible to appraise out because there was this massive credit. And sure enough, it didn't appraise. Of course, pre-realtor me had no clue what I was doing and didn't know how to, contest the appraisal or what comparables to bring or, how to kind of navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal fell apart.
Oh, wow.
Right before closing. We were packed. I mean, we had our next place and we were screwed. So I was like, okay, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And so I hired a realtor. Actually, funny story. The realtor I hired was MJ from Shaws of Sunset.
Stop it.
Yes.
That's hilarious. Wow.
So she
shout out to MJ. That's
so
crazy.
She actually lived in my building below my crazy neighbor. So yes, I hired MJ.
It's such a small world.
I know. This was before Shaws of Sunset.
Sure, yeah.
So I hire MJ. She comes in and she's like, "Oh, girl, like we got to make it fancy in here." And I'm pretty good with design, really good actually. Mm-hmm. But she was like, turning things around and adding coffee table books and, really helped stage the place. She's like, your photos suck. Retakes the photos. It looked so freaking good in there. She puts it on the market for $50,000 more than I had it for. Sells it in 1 day for full price. So I really was like, damn. It really freaking matters to use a realtor, a good realtor. And it made all the difference. I fell in love with everything about the process, I just fell in love with the industry at that point and realized how important realtors were. And I was like, I can't tell you how, do this.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate this story because the truth is the timing of this conversation is this wasn't scripted, right? Like this is a real story.
Right.
I wasn't even expecting that. It's a lot of people are questioning a realtor's value right now. And it's becoming this weird conversation of, well, we have buyer's agreements in play. We got NAR settlement, all that stuff. And so a lot of realtors are starting to have to reevaluate their value prop, right? Like
Absolutely.
What are you doing for a client? And you started out your career full blown knowing exactly how hard this is because you screwed it up.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. I don't think that these online sites are going to make it. I don't think that they're able to survive because they need they need skilled realtors to come together and say, look, no, these need to be, the pictures are awful. This needs to be, it's not just math. It's
right.
How do you attract the right type of people to your property so that they see what you see?
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about skills and expertise and experience now so more than ever. Thank God.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this because it's about time that the truly skilled, good agents are going to survive this and potentially, be in a better place than we have been in the last 10 years. So,
I'm not trying to offend anybody when I say this, right? But I've never been more excited than I am right now because the skill sets are showing, right? If you have decided to, kind of half-ass it this whole time, that's going to be very obvious because your clients are going to see right through it. And so those have been working on their craft night and day. You're going to see a very, very clear difference between those two groups of people. And one group's probably not going to make it. You're not going to be able to pay your
100%.
bills. right?
Yeah. Bye-bye to all of what I call the walking lockbox realtors.
Oh, wow.
Adios.
I love it. I love it.
Because, yeah, I mean, I think especially, sellers have always interviewed listing agents, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
They have always asked the right questions. You Google it, what should I ask my listing agent? It's there. They've done their due diligence. Buyers, however, have not.
It's true.
And it's so often that I see on my listings, for instance, a really great buyer, and the buyer's agent is not doing them any service whatsoever, is not asking the right questions, is not doing a good job. And they don't really know because they never did their due diligence on them. So I think now it's going to be crucial for buyers, and I think they're finally going to take it more seriously now that we have to have this conversation with them, now that they have to sign a buyer's agent agreement, now that they may have to cut a check to their buyer's agent. They're going to care more. They're going to be like, okay, if I might have to pay this person, I'm going to ask a couple questions. I'm going to make sure that they're, the right agent for me, that they have experience, that they've done these types of sales in this neighborhood, that they know what they're doing, that they have a good reputation, that they know how to navigate multiple offers. I think they're going to be a lot more discerning, and that's great. I'm excited for that. Bring it on.
Look, as a lender, right, we dealt with Dodd-Frank, and it was an absolute shit show. Mm-hmm. We all thought we were out of the business. We all thought that everything was going to fall apart. We thought that there's no way we can lend this way, and we had to figure it out. And what ended up happening was we shook the trees. Everybody who was, no offense to car salesmen, but if the cliche used car salesman type lenders, right, who didn't really care about the client, they just cared about the commission check, those people were out.
Yep.
Right? Because there were laws now protecting the consumer. My point is that there's nothing wrong with transparency. If you're worried about transparency, that says more about you than it does what the challenge is, right? Transparency is, there's nothing wrong with it. If you can articulate your value and you can put something together, it shouldn't be a non-starter, right? You can still go into a transaction fully negotiating, do what you need to. Again, I'm not a realtor, but being able to, be transparent with your client and show them what you're capable of, right? And why they should use you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think it's only going to elevate our industry. Yes, it's going to be messy. I think a lot of buyers are going to choose to forgo representation for a little bit until they trip and fall and realize they shouldn't and can't. And, it's going to be a little clunky for the next maybe year to 2 years. But I think in the end, this is going to elevate our industry. It's going to give realtors a better reputation because we all love to be hated and thought of as used car salesmen. But and there are a lot of used car salesmen like agents out there.
In 08, I stopped telling people I was a mortgage lender because they would respond and be like, I was like, no, I'm an attorney. I don't know. Like I just would say something else just 'cause it was just, you didn't want to hear that reaction. It's like, wait, what? Like I work very hard, right? Same thing with realtors right now. It's like, oh, that sounds awful. No, it's not. It's a career. It requires a real skill, right? And those that are embracing it are going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Talk to me about buyer's agents, buyer's agreements. Are you currently using them? What are your opinions?
Yeah. So honestly, I had never seen a buyer's agreement until about a month ago. I've been doing this for over a decade. I have never once had a buyer sign an agreement.
Okay.
My opinion was, I know I do a great job. My buyers have always been loyal to me. And I didn't think I needed that. So that's been my kind of mentality up to this point, but now we have to. So I have most of my buyers at this point I have had the conversation with. I am in buyer's agent agreements with them. I think it's great. I think a lot of buyers really don't understand how it all works. And some buyers don't even know that the agent is representing them. So a buyer clicks on, tour today on a third party site and boom, there shows up an agent they don't know that that agent is there to represent them.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a great thing. I have had some interesting conversations with buyers where they are trying to negotiate and, cap things and
How'd
things
that
like
go?
that.
Keep going. What happened?
Well, I did end a relationship and fire a buyer.
Okay.
And you know what? I feel good about it. Like, would I have loved that commission? Yes. But you know what? I need to be excited about the relationship as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start making it so that it's only one-sided and it's not exciting for me,
Mm-hmm.
I have lost my steam to do a good job. I need to be excited about it too. Just like I tell buyers and sellers in a deal, if both sides are not excited about the deal that you put together, it is not going to end well. It's not going to go well. So same with these kinds of relationships. Same with listing agreements. We both need to be excited about it. This is a two-way street. I'm going to put my foot down if this is not something that excites me. And if you're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, just like a seller does with a buyer, that the buyer turns around and walks away, I'm going to walk away. So that's what happened.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Sure.
So I had a COVID. You reminded me of something just now. COVID, we had record low interest rates. I mean, rates were in the 2s, and 3s, or whatever. It was
Good old days.
Yeah, good old days. It seems like forever ago. I was on the phone with a client, and I have fantastic rates. I have fantastic and you get to work with me and my team. Like, you get boutique style level service with a fantastic company. I know my value prop. So it's very rare that we get into these situations. And I got into it with a client one time, and it was over something like, we're talking trivial. Like, it was like the other lender had $100 difference in savings or not savings, but in cost or something really, really small. And it finally just dawned on me, because it just, everything I said, no matter, even if I just kept racing to the bottom or whatever I did, it's just nothing was making them happy. So I said, all right, I want you to forget this loan. Forget this loan for just a second. I want you to close your eyes. Just do me a favor. You just got a phone call from a police officer, right? And they're saying that your son is being charged with murder. Right.
Wow, that's intense.
What's the first thing that you do? Do you go to Groupon to get your attorney?
Yes.
Because, here's the thing. I don't think your son's a killer or anything weird like that. But, think about this. This is the most important financial decision you're ever going to make. And you're sitting here trying to use Groupon.
Negotiate $100.
Like, what are we doing here? You get me. I will absolutely... I'm a gladiator. I will go in there. I will make sure you are protected. I'm not afraid to kill a deal. I'm not afraid to, whatever. I'm here to protect you. That's who you're hiring. But what are we doing? Let's not start this relationship weird, right? It becomes a strange, that's what I'm hearing from you is we're already negotiating. We haven't even done anything yet. What is the deal? It's weird.
I take that back. Not intense, because that is so true. I mean, yes, this is literally the biggest transaction most likely you're ever going to make in your life.
Yeah.
And you're negotiating $100, $500, $1,000 when you're talking about a $500,000 sale. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and just like you said, when you're hiring a service provider, like an attorney,
you have an expectation. You expect
a contractor. Yes. You don't always go the cheapest route. In fact, you shouldn't go the cheapest route. And I always tell my clients, hey, I want you to get 3 quotes on contractors. Do not use the cheapest one.
I love when this upsets people. I see it on social media, and I don't love it, but I love to unpack it, because you don't seem somebody who's, they start talking about being overpriced and all this other stuff, but then you unpack, and this person's never bought a home. They've never gone through anything. They don't understand what we do for a living. They don't understand how hard it actually is and what's at risk. Because if you're asleep at the wheel, you lose everything. You lose earnest money, you lose the house, you lose your kids don't go to the school that you're trying to get them into,
100%.
All this crazy stuff. But I love that. I love your opinion on it. Talk to me about NAR. What do you think that's going to do to the industry? with the whole lawsuit thing? I mean, obviously it's speculation, but what do you think is going to happen?
I've read a lot of articles and I've thought a lot about this. I've stayed up many sleepless nights over this. But like I said before, I am excited about this because ultimately I think it is going to elevate our industry. I've read up to 80%, but I think it's going to maybe fall closer to about 50 to 60% of agents are going to leave our industry, which is not a bad thing. I think the true experts and the agents that really know what they're doing and are good at their craft, I think those agents are going to stay in the industry, succeed in the industry. I think the level of professionalism and transparency is going to, I don't know, just really help everybody feel good about our industry because, you know, people love to hate realtors and not really value what we do. And I think that this is really going to help that. And I will say the story that I just recently told about firing my client, I wrote an email. I was very passionate when I was writing the email. And I wrote an email about breaking it down, how you know, what the savings he was trying to get, and reminding him about a few scenarios where I was potentially saving him tens of thousands of dollars to not make a mistake that he was about to make.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's stepping over $1 to save a penny. And I really, really hope that buyers and sellers are going to be able to see the forest through the trees, and that when you hire a true expert, and it has to be a true expert, it's not just you should use a buyer's agent. No, you should use a really, really good, experienced, seasoned buyer's agent. And when you do that, you are going to save so much money, and it's going to change the result of your transaction.
The problem is that a lot of people don't understand that if there's a skill set difference between one side or the other, you're going to get run over, and they're going to figure out a way to run you over because they're good. And some of these people, it's not meant to be manipulation or deceitful or anything like that. It's just that you just decide to step on the court with Michael Jordan. You don't think he's going to dunk on you. Like, this is, you asked to play ball with Jordan. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
That's what he does, right? These people have been doing it. You've been doing this night and day for a very long time, sharpening your skills. And so you deserve it. You deserve the ability to protect your side, right? And so I think that's where people misunderstand this, is that it's not people being deceitful or taking advantage. It's just that they're going to do the right thing for their side and their client. And if you let them, they're going to go, okay, great. You know, I guess this is what we're doing. You know, you didn't catch this?
Yeah.
Well, whatever. What do you do? Or let's go back to the beginning of your career, right? How did you consider yourself good? Or what did you do to sharpen your skills to be better than someone else, right? Did you go through like proper training or how did you get to where you are today?
So, funny enough, I started my career, this was after my 8-year career in teaching. This was right before I wanted to have kids. I was very burnt out. We had just moved back to Chicago. I needed a reset. And I honestly thought that this was going to be a part-time kind of vacation money fund for my family. And so I didn't go into it, you know, wanting to be number one or, you know, I went into it with a very different mindset than most agents do or did.
Okay.
So, you know, when I started, I remember the agents that started in my class and joined the brokerage that I was at, they were doing all this intense training on, you know, business development and how to organize their CRM and the things that they should be doing to, you know, bring in business and clients. And I was like, how am I going to service a client right now? I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm not ready to do that. So I spent all of my time, focus, and energy kind of nerding out on being really, really, really freaking good at what I did. So I was going to inspections that weren't even my inspections and following the inspector around with a pen and paper and taking notes. I took an inspector out to lunch and I had a list of like 100 questions for him and I wrote everything down and I made note cards on it. I read this book of like how the home works, I think it was called, and memorized kind of everything. Like I wanted to educate, like I wanted to bring true value. I wanted to walk into a home and know, and not just be able to, talk about the cool backsplash or the fancy, counters.
Yeah.
I wanted to really educate my client on, this is what this is made of. By the way, this is how you take care of it. This is going to need to be replaced in 2 years, and this is how much it's going to cost you. Those are the things that clients remember.
Yeah.
Those are the things that buyers think, oh my gosh, what would I have done if I didn't have that piece of knowledge?
Because how many times does somebody buy something and they don't know, they don't have
They
enough
have no
information?
idea. And then they get these surprise, surprise, you have to redo the exterior of your house and it's going to cost you $25,000. So I wanted to be a true expert and I wanted to be the best at my craft in the industry. That was my goal. I was like, I don't care about being number one. I don't care about being rookie of the year. I don't care about any of that stuff. I want to be the best.
Provide a skill.
Yeah, provide the skill. And in real estate school, they don't teach you the practical, technical things that you really need to do, which, by the way, that's another conversation. But I really think real estate school should be like a 2-year program, but that's besides the point.
I see memes all the time where they're like, I know how to measure, a measurement that's never used whatsoever.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, knowing like the law of what parcels used to be,
right?
500 years ago, like we don't use any of that.
So none of it's relatable.
And honestly, brokerages don't really teach you that either.
Yeah.
Like you'll learn how to fill out a contract, you'll learn how to do business development, but nobody teaches you the things that buyers and sellers really need to have a successful transaction. Wow. So those were the things that I saw a gap in. I saw a gap in real estate agents not knowing that stuff. There was no education on it. So I took it upon myself to learn that stuff on my own and be a true expert so that when the business did come to me, I knew what I was doing. I was going to do an insanely good job, and they were going to use me again, recommend me to their friends. And that is what happened.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, anybody listening to this, you really have to unpack it, right? Is that I don't think anybody really explains it that way, of that you're selling a product. You should know how that product works. Right?
100%.
You should know how to, to actually service the people. Besides, is this trendy? Is this in a good neighborhood? Yeah, you should know that too. But you should also know, walking into a place, what improvements cost, what's going to need to be fixed, being able to help with the inspection. Because if the inspector has a role, but if it's all a surprise, right, then it just creates more drama and more
100%.
more stress.
Just yesterday I was at a showing with a buyer. They have 2 kids and we're in a townhouse. It was actually usually 4 levels, but this one was actually 5 levels. It had 1 furnace and 1 AC condenser. Mm-hmm. And so I told her, I said, by the way, this is 5 levels with 1 system. It is going to be really hot in the summer on that top level and probably really cold on the bottom level. And, the heat and the cooling air, it's not going to be very consistent throughout. And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you for letting me know that, because for their personal reasons, that was a big deal. And they decided not to put an offer on that place. So, it's those things that I feel like that's a big part of what our job should be. And a lot of agents don't have that knowledge base. They don't take the time to learn those things.
Yeah, you don't want somebody to buy something and to say, I wish I would have known, or
Yeah.
because then are they going to call you again when they go to look at their next house? Because if you weren't able to look out for them, they may have an opinion on that, on your skill set. All right, so it sounds like you went kind of an unconventional route, which is amazing. I love this story. What do you in today's, what bells and whistles do you use to help with your business? I know things have kind of modernized a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there anything that, do you use a CRM? Do you have tell me about your business.
Yeah. So I am probably a managing broker's worst nightmare because
I love it.
I have not opened my CRM in probably a year and a half, and I don't know how to use it.
Oh, wow.
I have one. My director of operations kind of mans it, but I can't say that I use it. I don't door knock or cold call, do Zillow. My business has been relationship based. And I have built my business through relationships.
Wow.
So, besides obviously doing a really, phenomenal job through the transaction and being memorable, doing something that they will remember. It's hard to remember things 5 years ago. I can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. So remembering an experience 5 years ago is tough. So, being memorable in some way and making an impact on them in some way, really connecting emotionally. And this is something I just naturally do, but I do make a concerted effort to do that because it's so important. But then continuing that relationship. So, we do client appreciation parties, and I send gifts out, and I reach out and ask, I remember what their kids' names are. I remember what their dogs' names are. I ask about them. I send them, activities that are going on in their neighborhood. I reach out with value, and not in an annoying way, hey, was just thinking about you. Who wants to hear from their realtor? Hey, just thinking. No, I reach out in a meaningful way, and I keep a relationship with them. And, my thinking is that
so and these are realtors watching this, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure they hear that and they say, okay, that, I don't, they're following whatever their coach, which no offense to their coach, but maybe they still have questions. What would you say is a way to reach out in a valuable way? Give me an example. Give me the last client that you reached out to that you think.
So I do collect their birthdays and wedding anniversaries. Those are two very personal days. It's not just Valentine's Day or holidays or New Year's Eve. That is something that's personal to them. And I reach out for both. I do a handwritten card for wedding anniversaries and reach out for birthdays. I think that's two very personal days to them. And they really appreciate it. I mean, who doesn't value someone calling or emailing or texting on their birthday?
Handwritten cards are like a lost art form. People don't do them anymore. So getting one, you're like, wait, you took the time to send me a card? It means something now. Whereas before it was the standard, now it's the exception.
Yeah. And, just following up on what's going on in their lives. If they were doing a rehab project, I'm going to reach out, 6 months later, and I want pictures. And I am truly interested. I want to see it. And and commenting on, oh my gosh, I love that wallpaper. That's a meaningful conversation that is enjoyable for them. So, just being interested in what's going on in their life. If they are in a certain industry and something comes out about that, I'll reach out and get their opinion. Just being valuable and interested in their life, I think is really important.
I'm hearing you being invested too. You're
Yes.
actually, it's intentional.
Yes. And I think I never look at my job as sales, but at the end of the day, it is sales. And I just read this article about taking away the me approach, which is, I'm the best realtor. I'm, please think of me, or please. No, instead putting it on them and focusing on them, asking them questions. That's what makes them feel good. That's what makes them have this connection with you. So yeah, I think it's important to be invested in them, remember things, be interested, be truly interested, because if you're not truly interested, you'll forget.
Yeah, and being a resource, right? I tell clients at the end of a closing, it's like, listen, if you think of the word mortgage, you should be dialing my number, right? I don't want you to even think about it. Like, I will help you figure it out. And I don't want you going to sleep on a Friday night worried about a tax bill that you got that you don't know what's going on with it. Call me. I will help you with it. And I want to answer those questions.
Yes.
You're allowed to forget about all of this because you got me. I'm like your lifeline.
I love that because I do think my clients really do view me as a resource. I mean, I had a client reach out 6 months ago or so asking for a divorce attorney. I mean, things that have nothing to do with real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Where should I get my hair cut? Do you know of any good vets? I mean, these are questions I get asked, and
I'm laughing at where should I get my hair cut? I'm like that's
you know what? I love that you're reaching out to me for that
Yeah.
because it has nothing to do with real estate, and you just view me as a resource that has, which I'm fine with. And you know what? If I don't have a divorce attorney on hand, which I do, by the way, but if I don't, I'm gonna find one for them because being the resource is a wonderful thing.
That's huge. Yeah. And it makes sense. You know, I think a lot of people are worried about, don't get me wrong, I like automation. I like having, a system. I've got a system for everything, but I'm also fearful of losing touch with people because of those systems, because we rely on them too much.
Yeah.
Right? Are you a systems person at all?
I am a systems person through and through with the back end of my business.
Yeah,
I am
same.
Some may call me neurotic. I am very type A, and I have checklists for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I tweak them all the time. I am kind of psychotic about following them to the T.
I love it.
Hats off to my admin for putting up with me with those. Yes, I'm a systems person, but when it comes to the relationship part of my business, I'm not so much, because like you said, I want it to be organic. I don't want it to feel robotic. I like to have some element of, just being organic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You reminded me of something. So when Caroline, my head of ops, sees this, she's going to laugh. She's going to say, break a dish, because it's a term we use on a regular basis. With systems, it's okay if something goes wrong, right? But we broke a dish. We run a restaurant. Now,
Yep.
What are we going to do to the checklist for this thing to make sure that we never do this again? So that,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you in the back end, is that you want to make sure that every single thing is covered.
You are speaking my language, because I am a problem solver through and through. And one of the things I think has made me successful is that when a mistake happens, which it is going to happen, not just once, not just twice, probably 100 times. When a mistake happens, instead of dwelling in the moment and beating myself up or trying to point the finger and beat someone else up
Yeah.
for for whoever was responsible for it, I go in the opposite direction, and I'm like, okay, that sucks, but what are we going to change moving forward? What was the reason that happened?
Yep.
What can we do to avoid that in the future? Let's take our checklist out. Let's change that. Let's implement it. Let's execute on it. And let's never let it happen again.
I love it.
So yeah, that has been not just with back end stuff, not with just administrative stuff, but also stuff in the field. I mean, I remember there was a time where I had like 3 bad walkthroughs in a very short period of time, where every time there was just something that came up that was really stressful on me, on the client. And of course, that's kind of the last impression they have of the experience, right? So I was like, I don't ever want my clients to feel stressed at a walkthrough. So I went back to the office. I sat down with my director of operations, and I was like, what can we do to avoid walkthrough issues? As a buyer's agent, I can't really see the property beforehand. I don't know what they've done or not done. This is my first time seeing it since the inspection also. So we formulated this email that we send to the listing agent about a week before the walkthrough. It's just a checklist for them. Like, I just want to make sure that, I just want to know if it's been professionally cleaned, because if not, I'm going to tell my buyer to hire a professional cleaner. I just want to make sure that, everything's out of that garage, because I know it was really stufful. Like it's just kind of a checklist. I want to make sure you have all the keys there. I would love it if they were labeled, but yeah. Now we send that to the listing agent a week before, and have I had issues at walkthroughs? Of course, but has it gotten a lot better? Yes. So
maybe even being able to set the expectation, right? It's like, hey, listen, they just admitted they haven't had a chance to clean it, so that's what you're walking into. Versus they walk in and go, "What's this?" Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. I've never even heard that before. That's great.
Clean, but there's like a bag full of dog poop on top of the counter. What does broom sweep clean mean? So let's really understand what we're walking into, so there's no surprises.
I love it. I think that's how you quantify it, right? To consider yourself good in this industry, you have to have screwed up.
Yeah.
But when you screw up, because it's always your fault. It is your fault. Own it and go, okay, so this happened. Next time, how am I going to make sure that I'm ahead of this?
Right.
Or ask the right questions, or to know that this is a possibility.
Yeah.
And even if it's a no 99 out of 100 times, that one time I caught it and it fixed the deal.
Yeah.
Right. That's why you do those things. And then you can add that value prop to your client and say, look, this is what I'm going to do for you. This is the experience I have. I think that's what some of these newer agents, or ones that don't have that real experience, they don't know what the difference is because they haven't screwed something up.
And I think teaching that has been, that's something that I've taught my team members is, a lot of times I get a call from one of them and they're so upset because, this XYZ just happened. And I'm like, okay, that sucks, but let's talk about it. Let's reflect on it. What could we have done differently to get a different outcome? Well, I guess I could have, called the agent and talked about this. Okay, so what are we going to do moving forward so that we don't get ourselves in this situation again? Let's change our habit of not doing that, or, doing that, and let's get a different outcome moving forward. This is great. Now we can make sure that we don't do that again.
I think I've gone through some moments myself recently that you're bringing to make me think of my own coach, right? My own coach. He's just all in my business, even though he says every time, he's like, you're amazing at what you do. But you have to do the same thing every single time. And people like us that are type A, it's like, I don't like what you just said, because same thing every time. What do you mean? It's all different. But he's right. If we have a process that is the same every single time, but we know where to pivot where we need to,
of course.
But you're touching all those, right? There's actually it's kind of freeing, right? You feel like you've accomplished it. You've actually done your job, and having that with your team is amazing because they're learning what is your process? Yeah. And if you can't answer that question, we got a problem. Yeah. Because you're not that good. You're not. You have to have a process.
Yes.
Talk to me about. Can I go a little controversial?
Please, I love controversial.
This is something I have to ask permission for, because not everybody's going to like what I'm about to say.
Okay, can't wait.
So I've gotten comments and DMs, and what a lot of people can't see on social media is the conversations that happen behind the scenes, and there's a lot of them. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people, and I love it. I love all of it. I love everybody's opinion. I don't think there's a right or wrong, right? But I'm very interested in hearing the opinions of agents. Because one of the things we started doing the show was we started reporting on units, because we had to decide, are we going volume or are we going units? I thought about it and I went, I think volume's great, but I'm interested in units. I guess let's start there, because I feel like if somebody's done, 250 units and the other person's done 100, but their volume level's higher just because they're in that market, like, I don't think that we should take the flowers away from that person with high volume, but I also want to talk to the person who did all those units and worked that much. I don't know. I mean, I want to have a conversation with that person too.
I love this. I love this question, because I think it was about a year ago I started thinking about this as well. Because in Chicago, it just so happens that we are kind of honored based off volume. And, how many million have you sold this year? And I, after running a team for many years and having some agents, do so many deals, but they were lower price deals. And maybe they didn't have the volume that another agent did, but they still were working their little butts off.
And sometimes harder.
Yes.
Sometimes those smaller deals are even
smarter
harder.
And we're doing a good job. Maybe they did a lot of rentals. I had an agent do, I think 30 high-end rental deals a year, and they got $0 of volume for it. So I decided, and then I also have co-listings on my team where I bring in another agent, and that's a lot of work too that they weren't getting acknowledged for because, they didn't bring in that business. It didn't go under their volume. So I started acknowledging agents on units as well, which I thought was a very healthy way to look at, an agent's kind of production, because like you said, one agent may do 2 deals that are, $3 million and $4 million, and another agent might do 40 deals, and it's the same volume. And I do think our system is broken a little bit because it's not really fair to acknowledge agents just on that one number without acknowledging how many units they did or how many just clients they helped. Because at the end of the day, do I want to acknowledge, one agent that's helped 3 clients that happen to be really, big deals? Or do I want to acknowledge a different agent that did, help 23 clients and families, but maybe their number's lower? So I think we should be, I think it should be both.
I would, right. That's where I was going to go with this. Is I don't know that it's broken per se, right? I would say that I think that the people who are doing high volume deals deserve their flowers. They deserve respect. It's amazing what you do.
Yeah.
No one is taking that away from you. The challenge is that some people have not made the list that we've created just because of the way that their business is run. It's not that I'm trying to, we're not trying to do anything more than just shine a light on, okay, in this specific area, who is the person who was the top in that area specifically,
yes.
Right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that we could do both. I think we can shine a light and say, hey, look, and I even explained it on every single time, saying, look, you may pull up this other agent's numbers and see a variance. Here's why, right? Is that we're looking at who are the people who are killing it in their area. And some of the phone calls we make, right? They have no idea. They have no clue. I'm like, do you know that you were the top agent in this area? And they're like, what? Really? What? And
I love those agents, by the way, that don't know.
Right. Like, and I feel like almost like bad. I'm like, is nobody telling you this? Is nobody, like, you don't even know that you're doing a great job?
I can't say that I am the agent where someone tells me like, oh my gosh, you were just in that, magazine or just on that top 20 list. And I'm like, oh, really? Because it's
not why you do it.
It's not. It's not. And yes, I play the game because it's the game we have to play, but the volume game, the numbers game, the being number one, it's just not the most important thing to me. Can I challenge you a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, what do you got?
So, I think
this is the first one that's ever challenged me. Let's go. What do you got? I'm ready.
Okay. So it is smoke and mirrors of how these numbers really are when you boil it down, when you unpack it. So you have one agent who has this, team ID, and teams are very big in Chicago. So, they're the number 1, they're the number 2, whatever number they are. But they have 40, 50, 60 agents working under them that are all contributing to that number. And then you have other agents who have 3 agents or 5 agents, or, right now I have 6 or 7 agents that contribute to that number. So is it fair? Is it apples to apples to say this agent is number 1, this agent is number 2, this agent is number 50, when some have 1 person working with them and some have 0 and others have 60? So I feel like those numbers are a little misleading sometimes.
I challenge anybody who wants to have a conversation with me in the DM. It'll stay private, right? I want the feedback. I want people, but I can tell you that this has come up quite a bit where somebody's very, very, very upset And if you think that I'm talking about you, I promise you, you're wrong. It was very, very interesting conversation, the one I'm thinking of. It wasn't what you would think, but they went on to explain to me all the people that I'd missed and the teams underneath them, and then went on to say, well, just so you know, you're never going to have another name there because of this and this and this. And they started explaining team dynamic. And I went, that is interesting. Maybe there's a separation from teams versus individual producers, right? I think that's an interesting conversation. It really comes down to industry, right? Because I think that, it really comes down to what do we as an industry find important and what deserves the attention, right? And I think that just like the units and volume conversation, we could absolutely separate out teams versus individual producers.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should be offensive to anybody.
The MLS has tried. Now they have kind of small teams, medium teams, large teams, individuals.
That's right.
But it's still flawed. Like there are still...
How so?
Sometimes I see individuals on there that I know have very large teams. It's not perfect, but the MLS has tried. But at the end of the day, I just, I don't think. Yes, it is important that an agent is very experienced and has sold a lot of homes and knows what they're doing. But is it so important to hire number one, number two? I feel like our industry has gotten so obsessed with numbers and kind of gotten away from being a good agent. And I think the consumer is also kind of blinded by that also. I mean, I've lost listings because I'm not the number one agent in the area. And I'm like, just because I'm not the number one agent doesn't mean that I'm not the best person for the job. Because I
think that's interesting too, is it really comes down to agents need to focus on who they are, right? And who their value prop is. And if you are authentically you will attract authentically you people, right? The people that want to be a part. So just because you're number one doesn't necessarily mean that you'll pull people across or that you'll get along, because those people lose people every once in a while too. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that you're right. I think it is competition and it's healthy. I think it all pushes us to do better. But I also think that you're right. As an industry, we do focus on this. It really is marketing. It's what it is. Is that it's competition, and then you use that for marketing. Say I'm the best, and this is how you get it. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. I just think there's something wrong when the only thing that I'm hearing, right, and this isn't just from you, is some people, man, they're working their butts off, and they've got no help, or they've got minimal help, or a leader who is leading a small group of people for individual successes that are deserve to be respected because their people that are underneath them are doing better and they're better versions of themselves. Such true leadership versus, you're hiring a bunch of people. There's nothing wrong with that. But if those people aren't putting up numbers, right? Like, how do you compare the two? Right?
Yeah.
It just equals one big number, right? Which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it all depends on the model that you want to be in.
Yeah.
But maybe shining a light on some of that, saying, hey, look at what this person has done for the people on their team, and look at their average, volume or average units or whatever since going under their leadership. That's an interesting way to look at it.
I wish we were judged not just on that one number, because I do think it's convoluted and, it's not always reflective of the skill and the experience and whatnot of the agent. Yeah. But it is the industry we're in. I play the game. Of course, when I make a list, I don't shove it down people's throats, but I do, of course, use it in my marketing. And but it is, I just hope that consumers can look a little further. That doesn't mean that, the number one agent or the number two agent isn't the best one for the job. But let's just dig a little bit deeper than just looking at that surface level number, because it's not all about that.
Yeah, agreed. So this is a show for realtors, right? If you were somebody listening to you right now, what advice would you have for them if they're looking to, further their career, or they're worried about 2024, whatever you think? Speaking to the industry, what advice do you have?
Lean in on your relationships. ask for referrals, share value and expertise. I see a lot of newer agents on social media, and it's like, just close. I'm at an inspection, on my way to showings. It's like, great, like that's great, but can you give me something more? So make yourself valuable.
Yeah.
Make yourself the resource. Make yourself the expert. On my social media, I can't say I'm the social media expert, but I do try to give valuable. I want them to read a post and take something away with it. Something meaty, something that they didn't know before. I want to educate them. So, don't do the me kind of marketing. Like, give them something. Let's give some value to your audience, and that's when they will consider using you.
My favorite is when somebody's standing in front of somebody else's listing, or they're broker open, and you pull their numbers, and they're posting these pictures about them being in this thing. You pull their numbers, they haven't closed anything, and it's like, what you're trying to attract somebody, and it's usually a $3 million place, something beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do you think a client that is going to buy a $3 million place is going to be attracted to that because you're posting that picture? That's
right.
not. And then if you're a first-time home buyer where that's not your price point, do you think they're going to be attracted?
Right.
It's like, you just want to have a conversation with them and help them on maybe crafting their marketing a little differently of value. Like,
exactly.
Why should somebody call you? Well, let me explain. This is what I've learned.
Exactly.
Right?
And honestly, being a new agent is really hard. And let me tell you, it's going to be way harder with our new world after this NAR settlement.
Mm-hmm.
A consumer needs to know you, they need to like you, they need to trust you, and they need to feel like you're an expert. So you could have all three of those things, but if they don't think you're good at what you do, they're probably not going to hire you. Let me tell you one quick story before we wrap up.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Was this my first sale? I think this was my very, very first sale. It was my sister. She did not want to use me.
Oh, wow.
Because I had just gotten my license. She knew I didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And was I actually going to add value to that? Yes, she knew me. Yes, she kind of liked me. Yes, she trusted me.
That's great.
But did she think I was an expert? Obviously not. She knew I had just started. I had to make a deal with her to give her a pretty nice size of my commission and have my team lead at the time kind of step in and be there every step of the way for her to use me. That's my sister.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kelly, if you're listening to this. But I don't blame her. I honestly don't blame her. Knowing what I know now, I don't blame her. But new agents, your friends and your family you can't rely on that. You need to learn what you're doing and show people what you're doing. Show them that you're an expert and actually be an expert, which might mean, taking the year to do what I did, follow inspectors around, make note cards, do all the nerdy things that I did, because nobody's going to use you. My first year, none of my really family and friends besides my sister used me. It was kind of random people I met at open houses and such. It wasn't until I was an expert that my family and friends started referring me and using me. So don't rely on that. You need to perfect your craft to have people use you, because everybody knows 5 realtors. You are one of 5, most likely. So unless they know you, trust you, like you, and think you're an expert, they're going to use one of the other 4.
Yeah, and you have to show that, right? You have to show your skill set. Like, you can't just assume because you have a realtor license that people are going to go, "Oh, 100%. I'll use you," right? They want to know, like, and trust you. Right?
Exactly.
That's exactly right. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
You did a great job.
This was great. Thank you so much.
As always, Tim Brigham, Coffees for Closers. Hope this helped you with your business, but thank you so much, Haley.
Yes.